The American Ballet Theater Studio Company is coming to UNLV's Artemis W. Ham Concert Hall. ABT Studio Company is a training program for young dancers to become professional ballet dancers. Their programs feature a dynamic blend of classical favorites as well as newly commissioned works. Their performance is March 11th at 7:30 p.m. Tickets start at just $20. Get tickets now at pac.unlv.edu by calling 702-895-2787 or at the UNLV Performing Arts Center box office. Nevada has been an outlier in allowing all kinds of legalized gambling, except for one. We've never had a state lottery. This year, the Nevada legislature is considering a constitutional amendment that would allow Nevada to have a state lottery. Will it pass? And is a lottery a good idea? Today on CityCast Las Vegas, I'm with Nevada independent reporter Howard Stutz and my co-host Dayvid Figler, and we're going to examine this issue from all sides. It's Monday, March 10th. I'm Sarah Lohman, and here's what Las Vegas is talking about. So, Howard, why does the Nevada lottery keep failing in state legislature? It's come up before, right?
Oh, come up. I mean, I can't countless times, but it's been a couple decades since this type of issue has gone through where it's in now a second hearing. You have to remember, this is a change to a constitutional amendment.
So we're closer than we've been in a while.
Oh, way closer, because this is the first time that we've had, it was heard in the 2023 legislative ssession. It passed out of both houses. So now it's up again for a second hearing in both houses. Though right now we're about a month, a little more, almost a month into the legislature. A hearing hasn't been set. We asked Assembly Speaker Yeager, what about it. Yeager voted yes 2 years ago. Right now, he seems to be slow rolling this. It's like, he wants to do some more due diligence. He's trying to figure out what it could cost, how it would be managed. So right now, it's kind of on the back burner. Culinary Union is the ones who pushed it 2 years ago as a way of raising funds for youth mental health care and research, which is, very sorely lacking here in the state. So it wasn't really controversial a few years ago. It's a little more controversial this time because, the Nevada Resort Association totally opposes the lottery. We can get into that, obviously, reasons why the casino industry doesn't want to see it. But at the same time, they're very adamantly opposed again this time around. And we're waiting to see where things move forward here at, a month into the session.
Well, Dayvid, we are a betting town, so I'm taking odds. What are the odds this amendment will pass?
Well, if it gets to the people, it's 100%. Even though I think more like 75% will vote for it, but I think it's 100% it will pass. The bigger question is, will it make it to the people through this legislative process? And while I think a lot of longtime gaming onlookers, including Howard and myself, might have been a little surprised that it didn't make it past, I think we're both flummoxed to predict whether or not it will make it through a second time, because now it really has big gaming's attention and more conversations are happening than happened before. As Howard mentioned, it was being proposed by the Culinary Union, essentially. They found an assembly person who could carry the bill for them, a person who is no longer in the assembly. And a lot of people, including us here at CityCast, kind of question the Culinary on why they picked the lottery as a source of income for, granted, an important thing like mental health treatment for teenagers, but the bill itself had no mention of treatment for mental health for anyone, let alone teenagers, and yet that was the only testimony that was given. A lot of people, myself included, felt that this was just leveraging for the Culinary to get some of the hotels to sign off on contracts and other things. They don't seem as into it this time around as they were last time, and that could be a determinative factor as to whether or not it actually makes it through, though it is popular with the people.
Yeah, I was going to say, I agree with Dayvid. They haven't not been very active this year on it. Now, 2 years ago, daily room cleaning, Senate Bill 441, was the big issue that everybody went to hill to die for between the Culinary and the resort industry. That was approved. The culinary then went into contract negotiations and got daily room cleanings in all their contracts. So that kind of overrode the lottery, so to speak. I did have a couple of lobbyists kind of tell me 2 years ago that the Senate had the votes to kill the lottery issue, but felt like they wanted to give the culinary a win, so to speak, and they did, and that's why it got through. There's a lot more anger toward it this time around. I think resort industry is just not going to let this go through. And as Dayvid said, he's correct. If this were to get on the ballot, which is what would do, if it passes in this session, it would go on the 2026 ballot statewide. I agree with Dayvid. It would pass overwhelmingly easily because people like the idea of a lottery. We know this. Look at the traffic in Prim.
I was going to ask, have either of you ever driven to Prim to buy a lottery ticket?
No, I haven't, but I've seen it, and it gets packed up, and it gets very crowded when there's a big Powerball jackpot. We have 2 sites in Nevada where we're just across the border where folks can buy lottery tickets. The one in Prim, and then up in Verdi, up in Nevada or northern Nevada, casino operator up there. The casino's right on the border with Nevada and California. He built a lottery store right across the border. There's a state line painted across the across inside the building where you can go where the lottery tickets are. Those are the 2 most draw the most amount of money from purchasing lottery tickets, according to the California Lottery Association. So obviously there is an interest here in Nevada from residents who would go over to California to buy lottery tickets when there's a big Powerball or the big multi-mega $1 million jackpots.
So, Howard, do you have any insight on why Jaeger is slow rolling for now? Like, what's changed?
Why the gaming industry may have
pretty obvious. Why it went through the first time and why it's struggling a little bit the second time.
Yeah, and they don't want to see it, and I think that's part of it. Some of the history is, Nevada is only one of 5 states without a lottery, and when you look at it. In many states, the lotteries came first. You think about all the way the game, years ago when I first started covering gaming, it was just Nevada and Atlantic City, and that was it for casinos. Now there's casinos in 30, 40 states when you count tribal casinos. So lotteries were there. So the casino industry, when they went into these other states, had to work with those states, to get approvals. I remember walking into, when I was doing a story about gaming expansion in Pennsylvania, in Philadelphia, a few years ago when I was with the RJ, and I went into one of the casinos in Philadelphia. They had terminals for the lottery, to purchase Pennsylvania lottery tickets in the casino. MGM, when they built their casino in Springfield, Massachusetts, had to have an area set up for purchasing lottery tickets. So they have worked together. This is the one state where the casinos were here. Now they want to put in a lottery, and it's always been fought by the casino industry. Because, as I think I've written this before, one of the major CEOs told me, they view $1 that goes toward a lottery ticket could be $1 that goes into a slot machine. So that's just the way the industry has, with blinders on, has looked at the lottery.
Holiday presents, in the red corner, the undisputed, undefeated Weed Whacker Guy. Champion of hurling grass and pollen everywhere. And in the blue corner, the challenger, extra strength Holiday. Eye drops that work all day to prevent the release of histamines that cause itchy allergy eyes. And the winner by knockout is Holiday. Holiday, bring it on.
This episode is brought to you by Peacock. The new Peacock original documentary, Matthew Perry, A Hollywood Tragedy, dives deep into the beloved actor's rise to fame and his tragic death. 5 people, including Perry's personal assistant, 2 medical doctors, and an alleged Hollywood drug dealer known as the Ketamine Queen, were charged with conspiracy to illegally provide Perry with the ketamine. Explore the details of the case in this heartbreaking special, streaming now only on Peacock.
So is that why our state constitution has prohibited Nevada from operating a lottery? It's been on the books for, 159 years?
Since the beginning, basically.
Yeah.
And I think that most states had a ban on lottery either on the books or in their constitutions for a very long time, because back, in those days, and we're talking the late 19th century, early 20th century, lotteries were pretty sketchy things. And there were too many questions on how they were operating and whether they were legitimate, how it impacted people. Look, there used to be a very different conversation in the United States about the import and impact of gambling, even here in Las Vegas. I mean, we went through a lot of different iterations of allowing some, not allowing others, et cetera. When it went basically wide open in 1931, it wasn't without restraint or limitations or conversation about how this might impact the local populace that really slow played the expansion, even though it was wide open. You look at a place like Las Vegas. As late as the 1970s, Las Vegas limited gambling to certain areas. Other than the occasional slot machine here and there, you couldn't have a full-blown casino basically outside the blueprint of around downtown. Stations Casino, the original Bingo Palace Station, was the first locals casino, and they had to change the law for that to occur. And then, locals became a bigger part of the conversation. But lottery never kind of came back around. But, we don't talk about the restraints on gambling, the downside of having gambling in the community or focused on locals gambling to, I think, revisit this. To me, Sarah, that's like the missing element here. And even Steve Yeager, who's talking about doing more research, et cetera, nobody really wants to talk about the actual cost to a community.
Let's talk about it then, Dayvid.
Yeah.
Let's actually start with the pros. So the culinary union supports the lottery. So what are the arguments of people who say the Nevada lottery bill would be a great thing for the state?
That it would funds from the lottery would go to help service mental health, youth mental health care. But
although that's not guaranteed, Howard.
It's not guaranteed. It wasn't in the language in the legislation. It still isn't.
Yeah.
There's really. It was really thought of when they started arguing for this, is that, okay, this is just we're coming up with an idea, but there's no solution for it. Right now, what Yeager's talking about is, okay, how is this going to be regulated? Did you give it to the Gaming Control Board, which is overwhelmed and understaffed as it is right now?
Cough, Resorts World, cough.
Yeah. Do they
and the money
go ahead?
laundering scandal that they missed.
Okay, some minor things here, Dayvid. So how were they regulated? Was there to be a whole different lottery commission set up? Are we just going to do scratch-off tickets? Are you just going to get into the mega millions of the Powerball system? The question is, should we have a lottery? That's really what it boils down to. That's the simplest way to look at it. And I think, he just said that's just really where he's at right now. That's the excuse they're using. Culinary did not really have any answers to that. They just wanted to say, let's just, whatever money is raised, we'll use the tax funds to go toward mental health services. Well, how much is the tax? There's all that questions. A lot of this has to be worked out, and we just don't know where that is. And I don't know if there's the stomach this year in this session. It may just die in the session, where there may never be a hearing. That's easy. That's happened before with other issues, especially if, as Dayvid said, if the culinary is not that geared up for it, then it may just sit and quietly go away. That's just the way it would be.
And the other argument is fairly simple. Other than it being popular amongst people because people like to gamble, that's why we exist, Sarah. Is like, what's the difference for having yet another form of gambling? We've pretty much got all the rest of them. The barn door's open. The horses are galloping. Why hold back this one, star thoroughbred?
Why hold back this one star thoroughbred of gambling, Dayvid? What are the cons of having a state lottery?
All right. Sit back down. This is going to be a Figler rant. Here we go.
I wasn't standing, but okay, I'm here.
Lottery is different. It really is. It's a different form of gambling. It is a lower barrier, less trained human interaction, less tracking. You don't have a player's card for lottery use, et cetera. And it's impulsive. more so even than the slot machines that you might find in your local grocery store, which is set aside, or in convenience stores, which are set aside. This is like an impulse right there, and it's like right in your face. And a lot of people who testified, interestingly enough, for the culinary, was like, we need all this mental health help, said, I never even thought about gambling before, but lottery's interesting to me. I would start gambling. And we just don't have the conversation in our community how gambling does have a downside. Like, look, I am in favor of keeping gambling where it is, but we don't study it to the degree that we absolutely need to. There is plenty of studies nationally that talk about the social costs of gambling in any community. It's set somewhere between $9 and $12 billion annually that it costs. If you go to the courts, you look at the criminal court, the family court, the bankruptcy court, it is filled with stories of people with gambling addictions whose lives and the lives of those around them have been uprooted because of these issues, right? So what can we do to slow that roll a little bit? Well, we could talk about it. What is the social cost of gambling in our community? What percentage of gambling wins come off of people who have serious mental disorders? And how can we use more effective tools than like a pamphlet that's sitting off in the corner to encourage people to get the treatment that they need or to intervene where possibly necessary? These were conversations that used to be held all the time, and probably part of the reason why lottery was banned in our Constitution, that we don't even talk about anymore. Instead, what you get is the gaming industry saying, we throw plenty of money at problem gambling treatment and education, but how effective is it? How is it lowering the social costs to the community, et cetera? Now you want to introduce, without having any of that information or data, a new stream of gambling that's going to get new people hooked into it when you're not adequately addressing the downside of gambling at all. You know, in casinos, at least, everyone has training to recognize someone who has a problem gambling situation, offer them alternatives. I mean, in theory anyway. Now we're talking about just the clerk at the 7-Eleven who's just handing you those things. And that's before you even get to the decent studies on lottery that talk about how disproportionately the revenue is driven from poorer parts of the community, that is really just sticking it into those communities hardcore, and how 40% of the revenue of lottery is generated by 10% of the people who engage in lottery, which suggests that they're doing it a lot. And also, you want to talk about odds. You know, the odds of hitting a royal flush are astronomical if you're on a video poker machine. Multiply that by a couple of thousand to hit the big jackpot in a lottery. And it's just, there's not enough information about how a lottery would even work in a place like Nevada for us to be considering this, when all the testimony last time was just about how all this money is going to be generated to mental health treatment, even though that wasn't in the language, as Howard pointed out. I would point you to how legalized marijuana did not solve the education crisis in our community either.
And the marijuana, we go to that, it hasn't even solved the illicit market. It's the regulated market is losing business still to the illicit marijuana market. And it's funny, Dayvid made a point, and I'm remembering this. We drove, because my family in California, so we'll stop sometimes at Barstow to get gas. And woman in front of me in the line at the convenience store, we're at the gas station. All of a sudden she says, "Oh, let me have a couple of lottery tickets." It's like
it's really impulsive.
And then the point being about the money. Yeager pointed out, he said at the session last week, he says, look, I don't want to set up, we don't know how much money it'll make in terms of tax dollars. We don't have any studies on that. Mm-hmm. That's what he's trying to figure out. He said, I'm not going to set up a system where the state's not going to make any money on it. I mean, why waste our time? That's why I think, Dayvid, it's headed in that direction. It's where it's headed. It's headed out. I don't think it'll make it through this session if there's even a vote on it.
Well, how do lotteries benefit states? Have they benefited other states?
California does put out a report that says how much money is going to these programs. It spells out all the different programs around the state where funds from the lottery has benefited education primarily in California. I don't know about other states. Texas has a lot, most other states have, like I said, there's 45 other states with lotteries. So yeah, I'm not sure how all these other states, what they all have lottery commissions, lottery organizations, and put out glossy reports like every other, organization does, here's where our revenues went, here's what we funded, blah, blah, blah.
And then you get studies out of places like the Howard Center for Investigative Journalism, and they talk about how state lotteries transfer wealth out of needy communities, that because so much of it is generated in the economically depressed communities, that even if there is a tax benefit, it gets redistributed typically to other than those communities that put into it. So you don't really get the same back that your communities are putting in, and you're seeing a more direct impact. Look, I will argue all day long about how there definitely needs to be more attention or conversation about directing gambling day to day to locals versus taking the money of the tourists or coming here to have a fun time. Like, I wish that was the only way that we generated the revenue, and that locals had less focus on them to be the source for, gambling wins.
It's fascinating. You look at a market like Singapore. They have two major, huge casinos there. Two proper, one owned by Las Vegas Sands, the other by Resorts World. Singapore residents, they have to pay like a certain fee, like $100 just to enter the casino. So they charge. They try to deter locals from gambling, and I think that's the way it's going to be in the UAE, where we're now seeing the United Arab Emirates is legalizing casinos, and you've got one under construction and Wynn. But if you're a resident of the UAE, gambling is prohibited. It's illegal. Those are the kind of issues that what the gaming industry faces going in and around the world.
So for both of you, let's say this passes this session and we get a state lottery. Like, how might the lottery change the structure of gaming in Nevada?
It's going to open up a Pandora's box of conversations on how to do it, because essentially right now it's just to remove the barrier to have the conversation. There would still have to be significant legislation that got passed on how a lottery would look in a place like Nevada. So it's very speculative. There's some conversation. Howard did reporting on this. Speaker Yeager has indicated that are we talking about these scratch-off things, which really are a doom for a community? I'm just going to say that right now. Or the big mega billions, and how do we handle that? And where would the money go, and how is it taxed? And is it, like Howard said, is it going to be a gaming commission issue, or is it going to be a separate lottery commission? Lottery has a lot of money and influence, too. Lottery has lobbyists, and they are also pushing right now. I mean, gaming doesn't win every single time, Sarah, and if it does come in, they will pivot, and they will figure out a way that they can incorporate it into their structure as well. There's no doubt in my mind that there will be lotto kiosks inside casinos if, in fact, it does get through. Something like that.
Think about on a totally other subject, sports betting. How long did the major leagues and the NC2A fight legal sports betting? Once passed but got thrown out in 2018 by the U.S. Supreme Court and opened it up to open sports betting to all the other states, you saw the NC2A and everybody going, wait a minute, we can make money on this? Okay, and that's why you see what we've seen now in the growth of sports betting.
We also saw a spike of problem gambling related to sports betting and the access through the mobile phones and things of that nature. And that conversation has not fully been developed yet.
And then with lottery, you may see, if it gets through this session, if AJR 5 passes again, then it's got to go to the vote. Now we'll see maybe a ton of money come in to try to kill it in the ballot. Could be a waste of time. Then, as Dayvid said, it's got to go back to the legislature to figure out, okay, how do we draw up the rules for this? What are going to be the rules and regulations? What do we set up a commission? How do we do this? That's going to be that would be the next step. So it's not going to be like 2026 voters vote in favor of it, and all of a sudden we got scratch-off tickets come at your local 7-Eleven, in the following week. It'll take time, and like Dayvid said, the casinos are going to figure out a way. That's what, look, they already coexist with lotteries in other states. That's what they will see. You'll see kiosks. You will see some type of like, a window or something at a cashier's cage. Buy your lottery tickets. So you're going to see stuff like that in the casinos if it were to pass. I'm not in the prediction. I'm not John Ralston. I'm not the predict. I'm not going to be the prognosticator. But if I predict, I don't think it gets through the session. I think it just dies quietly in the session right now, mainly because, like as Dayvid said, you don't see the culinary making it a hill to die for like they did a couple of years ago. But it was also the same time as daily room cleaning. And if that daily room cleaning bill comes in again, forget about the lottery. Everybody's going to try to kill that right away.
Well, we'll see what happens, and we'll keep our eye on it, and maybe if it passes, we'll have y'all back again. Thank you so much, Howard. Thanks, Dayvid.
Thanks.
Sure, Sarah.
Appreciate it.
And that's all for today here on CityCast Las Vegas. If you enjoyed this show, why not share it with a friend? You can rate the show and leave us a review wherever you get your podcasts. And don't forget, subscribe to our morning newsletter. We'll be back tomorrow morning with more news from around the city. Take care. Yeah.